What if the accuser, adversary, or enemy was so cunning that he could lay a crafty snare or trap to catch people when they take their first steps towards trying to walk in truth? Welcome to the YaHUsHa channel. This is a video expose or investigation, letter by letter, word by word, where we do our second part on deep diving into the name game or the name games that are played. The main topic will be God, GAD, or is it the same difference? If you look in the New Living Translation for Jeremiah 8:8, Jeremiah 8:8, it states, "How can you say we are wise because we have the word of yahua, when your teachers have twisted it by writing lies?" The implications for this are very grave. If you look in the ISR, it states, "How do you say we are wise and the Torah or instructions of yahua is with us? But look, or behold, the false pen of the scribe has worked falsehood." In this chart here I've downloaded, there's different versions, various ones. On the left side, this is going to give you the name of the Hebrew letters. In the second column, it says Hebrew in green above. This is the actual true Hebrew lettering that you would find carved into the stones around Mount Sinai and so forth. In the next column, you find what they labeled Aramaic, which I would consider Babel brew, is what I would call it. And then the letter meanings are listed in the middle. And these act as an aid to help you figure out if the definitions match or make sense with the wording or the lettering. And then the last, of course, column is the pronunciation. But more on that later in a different video. It's a whole nother topic. So when we start this expose or investigation, we're going to take the word GAD. This is from the Strong's Concordance based definitions, the key meanings and context. It states that word means good fortune or luck. The most common meaning linked to good luck arriving, or troop, band, could say a crowd, derived from the Hebrew root gimel, delet, delet. That would be gadad, meaning to gather, like a cloud or a crowd, or to attack, fitting Jacob's prophecy for the tribe. But note, there's also a pagan deity, and it's mentioned in Isaiah 65:11 as a God of fortune, worshipped by the Canaanites in the location Baal-GAD. So we need to be very careful about this word here. It's starting to look very suspect. So let's look at the etymology for GAD. In Genesis 30:10, it says, "And Leah's female servant, Zilpah, bore Yaakov a son," that is Jacob. "And Leah said, with GAD." So she called his name GAD. Now this is Strong's 1410. It says GAD, but it looks like it has a mark on the top of the A that would be GADE. I forget what they call that in literature or English. But you got a gimel and a delete. So the root word etymology comes from gimel, ua, which a lot of people call it vav, which is a Masoretic term. And then you have a delete, that's from H1464. So 1410 has 2 letters, and 1464 has 3 letters, but the 3 letter is a root for the 2 letter. So I'm already starting to sense some confusion here. I don't understand how a 3 letter word could be the root of a 2 letter word, but I digress. If you look at H1464 in Strong's, you get the word good, gimel, ua, delete. And from an AI overview, I got the Hebrew gud likely refers to the Hebrew word gad, which comes from gud delete, meaning fortune or true, a name for a son of Jacob, or potentially the verb root for invade, attack. But it also could be a misunderstanding of the word for good. So here's an AI overview. In Babel Brew, which is the Masoretic renditions, G-D, written with a hyphen, is used in English as a sign of reverence to avoid writing out the name of God. Stemming from the prohibition against erasing God's name in set-apart text, HOLY, with common Hebrew substitute being ADONAI, that meaning my Lord, or Hashem, the name, in speech. While there isn't a direct Hebrew letter GD, the letters GD, Gimel, Dalet, can appear in specific context, like referring to the pagan God, GAD, which means fortune. And I included in this a picture that tells a pretty serious story concerning GAD. If you look on that dollar bill picture, you can see right there God, which is usually how it's pronounced. Then you look, the worst thing is looking around it, at all the satanic graffiti and so forth. So labeling or putting this word on us, what some would consider a source for fortune or wealth, it's starting to tie in together a little bit more, I would think. Next slide. Looking at 1464 in Strong's, you got G, Gimel, Ua, what they call Vav in the Masoretic, and Dalet. Root word etymology. A primitive root akin to, this would be Gadad, H1413. Gimel, Dalet. It means to penetrate, cut, attack, invade, and this could point towards the garden. Qualitative, to penetrate, cut into, to cut oneself, and this made me think of the prophets of Baal when Elijah called fire down on the offering, and they were cutting themselves because they couldn't get a response from their deity. And it can also mean to gather in troops or crowds of people. So, root word etymology, a primitive root, compare with Gimel, Ua, Dalet, or Gimel, Vav, Dalet, 1464. So we started with 1464. It referenced a primitive root, 1413. We looked at 1413, and it referenced 1464 from the beginning. So that's a red flag for circular reasoning. there may be a name game at play here, in other words. Let's look at the Apocrypha. What does the book of Hanok or Enoch 1 state? Enoch 1 was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, so that's the only one I would reference. In 68 verse 6, it says, the name of the third, and this is talking about the nephilim, those who had fallen, the watchers that had fallen. The name of the third is Gad, then it has the L at the end of it. I would call it Al if I was referring to anything righteous. So there's that word. He discovered, or he taught every stroke of death to the children of men. So now we're starting to get an ancient, probably original source for Gad, which originally was the name of a good messenger, Malachim, one of the good ones, but then it fell. So now we have to be careful about how we use this word. In Hanok 68:7, he, Gadrel, seduced Eve and taught to the children of men the instruments of death, the coat of mail, the shield, the sword for slaughter, every instrument of death to the children of men. Binyom Adom. Well, let's look in YaHUsHa, or John 8:44 from the Gospels. It says, this is the true Messiah, YaHUsHa, the YaHUsHa, speaking to the Pharisees, Kenites, I would call them, that seed line from the garden. He told them, you are of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So here is this fallen Nephilim in the garden that seduced Eve, which helps you understand why Yahuwah told the serpent, which I would call a seraphim, a fiery serpent, there will be enmity between her seed and your seed. So things are really starting to fit. The puzzle pieces are starting to fit together much better when you go to Hanok. He taught the murdering or the slaughtering, the instruments of death, and his offspring committed the first murder. And that offspring continued on, and they caused the murder of the true Messiah. Well, he allowed them to. He gave himself to be executed, but they are the ones that orchestrated it. On to the next slide. Looking at Strong's 1432, it's Gimel Dalet Lamed. The Strong's translates it in the following manner. It means to grow or great. Root word etymology from 1431, Gimel Dalet Lamed. The root word etymology from 1431, it's a primitive root, and it's translated in Strong's in the following manner: magnify, great, grow, nourish up, grow up, greater. And then 25 times, that's almost 22% of the occurrences of this word are miscellaneous. That's a problem. There's way too much variation in definition here. But on to the next slide. So here's a question. Why was Elohim, or they would say Elohim, why is God used to refer to that word? Are certain people being snared or tricked into calling the name of the adversary, the accuser, or Satan as their deity? That Gadrel. Looking at YaHUsHa or Jeremiah 23:27, it states, which think to cause my people, the Kodesh, called, to forget my name by their dreams which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. More on that later, but let's see how this ties in with the next verse. This is Joshua, which is the actual true name of the true Messiah, YaHUsHa. It's a reference to him. This is Joshua who led the Israelites into the promised land. Joshua ben Nun. Ben Nun means the son of life or seed line. And YaHUsHa, of course, HaMashiach is the Aleph and the Ta, the Almighty Redeemer, the Atonement Lamb. So it says, from Mount Halak and the ascent to Seir, even as far as Baal, Gad, in the valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon. And a lot of you probably know this, but some may not. In the book of Hanak, Mount Hermon is where the 200 Nephilim descended and made their oath. That's why it's called Harmon. And he captured all their kings and struck them down and killed them. So YaHUsHa ben Nun slaughtered the kings that resulted from, originally from Mount Harmon, I would call it. So Psalm 68:4 says, sing unto Alua, they put God there. Sing praises to his name, extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name, Yud Het, that is to say, Yah. In the first video, we said fill in the blank, hallelujah. What do you fill in next? Yah. That is the short form name of the Most High. And it says, and rejoice before him. I believe they put a small h there, and I went ahead and put a capital H because it refers to the Almighty. Over on the side, we have Psalms 147:1, and it says praise. That word is halal. The Master, Yah, Yud, Het. How good it is to sing praises to our Elohim. They put God. How pleasant and fitting to praise him, and I capitalize the H. On to the next slide. So I did a search online, and this word popped up. I thought it was interesting, so I threw it in here. G-A-D-Z-O-O-K-S is an Old English word used as an exclamation of surprise or alarm, often considered a mild swear word. It is a euphemistic shortening of God's hooks. G-O-D, and the word has G-A-D, referring to the nails on the cross, and is derived from a historical practice of avoiding the direct mention of God's name. Let that sink in. Amazing. On to the next slide. Oh, before I do that, there also was a holiday stop animation puppet. I don't know if any of you can remember. That was the name of a character in that holiday special that used to play. I think it was from the 60s, 1960s, that had that name G-A-D-Z-O-O-K-S. I think it was a giant vulture or something. Anyway, I just tossing that out there. So what about a mouth profaned? How important is it to refrain from using names of mighty ones, which would be Gibarim, or I would say Gibayam, Hosea, YaHUsHa, that's salvation. That's the Shah part of YaHUsHa, the true Messiah. 2:17 says, "For I will take the names of Baalim, that's plural. I would use a yam at the end personally, out of her mouth." And I'm pretty sure it's talking about his bride, or Yeshua. "And they shall no more be remembered by their name." They shall no more be remembered by their name. Talking about Baal, plural. And Joshua 11:17 says, "From Mount Halak, the ascent of Seir, even as far as Baal Gad, valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon." Again, we had already looked at that, but it ties in the two words. If you look in Exodus 23:13, it gives this command: "And in all things that I've said unto you, be circumspect. Make no mention of the name of other gods," that would be Elohim, "neither let it be heard out of thy mouth." So, a lot to chew on there. Salah.